everyone. Welcome to our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion keynote. I'm Melonie, and I am so thrilled to be here to chat with our incredible guest, Silvia Vasquez-Lavado. We're connecting with Silvia on her journey of resilience and impact as she became the first openly gay woman to climb the highest mountains on all 7 continents. That's right. Silvia scaled 7 summits and now scales social justice with her organization, Courageous Girls. Thank you so much for joining us today, Silvia. I'm feeling a lot of kindred spirit with you. We're wearing the same color shirt, so I know we're going to have a lot of chemistry as we go through this conversation.
Oh my God, Melonie, what an honor. Thank you so much for inviting me. I am just thrilled. And yes, red power, we're here. What a conversation. Thank you.
Well, I always like to start off conversations by asking this. Tell me how you self-identify.
Well, thank you for asking me that. I am a Peruvian-American LGBTQIA+ proud member of my community. I'm a mountaineer, an explorer, a social justice, a survivor, a warrior. That's how I would call myself.
You have a pretty incredible story, from surviving abuse, immigrating to the United States, navigating the corporate ladder, battling addiction, and then climbing the highest peak on all 7 continents while giving back to other survivors of abuse. We are thrilled you're here to share your journey of really finding your voice and your resilience and how you channeled all of that for social justice. And I want to dig into how inclusion and belonging impacts your life. But first, take us back to the beginning. You shared that you experienced sexual abuse at a young age by a trusted family friend. You left Peru and came to the States, escaping that abuse. Can you share with us more about how this experience impacted your life and how it affected your sense of belonging?
Yes, thank you, Melonie. Unfortunately, I'm part of a very sad statistic. 1 in 3 women around the world will have to experience some kind of sexual violence. And for me to go through that experience at such an early age, it took away the innocence and the joy of being a little girl. I think it took away my part of belonging to being a normal girl. And unfortunately, just like most victims and survivors, I blame myself. And by doing that, even took away feeling that I was part of something, of feeling that I was part of normality. And so I remember all I wanted to do was to really run away or escape. And so when the opportunity came for me to come to the US on a scholarship, it was equivalent as of I have a chance to restart my life all over again, completely let go of my past. I was so ashamed of my past. I couldn't even see myself as a little girl. And there is a really powerful photo that I came across, I think, after one of my eviction notices. And there was it was me at age 6 years old. I was wearing a turquoise tracksuit, 2 little ponytails. I was around 6 years old. I had a smirk. And I was so mad at this photo. I really wanted to destroy the image. I only felt pity for that girl. And I just felt that a way of running away would actually be the way for me to let go of myself. And unfortunately, that only started making a hole much deeper for my own shame and my own self-destruction. I mean, I definitely belonging. I was just trying to self-destroy myself while trying to look on the outside to have a very different life.
I hear you. Let's dig deeper into that. If you don't feel like you belong even to yourself, how can you belong anywhere? I mean, that resonates so much with me. And those life experiences, both positive and negative, are part of our whole selves. And at Google, we believe in the idea of bringing your whole self to work. And we recognize that whole selves are made of so many layers, from how someone identifies, which is really informed by what they've experienced. And once you immigrated to America, you climbed the corporate ladder at places like eBay and PayPal. How did you show up in the tech world in the early 2000s?
It was something very interesting. I always was fascinated by computer science. I started playing back in those days, Commodore, Atari, trying to learn programming. But my father was a very close-minded conservative accountant who definitely didn't see the value in computers. But it was always incredibly appealing to me. And so as I started developing my career here in the US, I had the opportunity to engage in complex financial implementations and use that passion. But what really opened up my eyes was just expansion, the global inclusion that the technology companies were having. To me, it leveled the playing field. Technology was available in so many places. And I think for me to have the opportunity to start visiting some of the offices, to start working with people around, brought this sense of unity, brought this sense of belonging. We were all, doing a really good cause, which is the way that I also saw technology. What you can definitely make positive changes. You can empower in unlimited ways. And so being part of it helped me quite a bit. Still, I needed to do a lot of work on myself.
So tell me more about breaking. And in the midst of it, you returned to Peru. I mean, did this physical homecoming shift in your family's acceptance?
It actually was it was a little trickier because I remember my drinking was getting out of control, and I had hit rock bottom, and it was the very first time I asked for help, and I had a complicated relationship with my parents, and my mother asked me to come down to Peru and do a powerful healing meditation with ayahuasca. And it was something that my mother, both my parents were very close minded, very conservative people. And my mom's experience on it really had stayed with me as to how it had connected her to her consciousness. And ayahuasca is an ancient indigenous medicine that people in the jungles of the Amazon have been practicing for centuries because it allows you to unblock emotional pain and it allows you to open higher levels of consciousness. And so for me, when I did this ayahuasca, it almost felt I was at the lowest of my life. And what really surprised me is that on my session, on the very first vision that came to me was of the little girl that I had seen on that turquoise tracksuit. She was crying in a corner. And I remember seeing as an adult being mad as to like who had hurt her. And as I approached the little girl and we reconnected together, I remember feeling this energy inside of me, feeling as if something was becoming whole again. And as we started, I remember like just grabbing and hugging this young little girl. And somehow as we were together, we heard this rumbling. And these mountains opened up in front of us. And it was my little girl who extended her hand and pulled me walking into mountains. And that was really powerful for me because I remember I ran away from my country with so much shame. And it was almost the natural medicine in my own country that gave me this incredible opportunity of just reconnecting to this past and allowing me to see that that was what was causing so much pain for me to really accept myself for who I was.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about saving yourself. I mean, this idea of identity and belonging having so many layers, working to save yourself was undeniably a big hill to climb. And I intended that pun because this is really where you got into mountaineering and took on your first summit. I have so many questions around this. First off, how did you choose mountaineering as a path forward?
Uh, so for me, it actually definitely was not what I had ever imagined. If anything, I was scared of mountains. Even I come from one of the most beautiful mountain places in the world in Peru, our white Andes. And but always the idea of mountain climbers were like the bravest of the brave, the toughest men always. And so for me, I never fit any of those descriptions. And so I remember when I returned back from this session with my parents of ayahuasca, I had this insight in my heart, and I remember telling myself, "Well, I've never had come across something so powerful. Why don't I take this vision literally?" And I'm a Virgo, so I'm very practical, and I figure, well, if I need to bring this massive pain in my life, it only makes sense to bring it to the massive mountain in the world. So I decided to take myself to the base of Everest. Zero experience whatsoever. The closest I had ever done when it came to camping, I would drive to a campsite, set up my tent, be around the river, and then drive out. I was never really compelled to be nature. And so I remember I went to Kathmandu. I got into this, trekking expedition on my own, just with a local guide and a porter, not knowing what to expect. And on my second day, when I came across the Himalayas, that is possibly when my life changed forever. Because here I was walking under the shadows of the tallest mountains in the world. And these shadows were the thing that it was actually the thing that was so big enough to swallow all of my pain, to swallow all of my shame, to swallow just all these memories. And I felt a sense of belonging. I felt a sense of welcoming that not a single person in the world had ever given me. And it was so powerful that I remember I started almost rediscovering my courage. And I got so inspired. I made it to the base of Everest in 4 days instead of the 8 days it take. I went so fast that I made my local trekking guy sick. He couldn't continue with me. But I remember just wanted to just being surrounded. There was this safety. And so when I get to the base of Everest, I had the opportunity of seeing the sunrise. And as the sunrise came down between Everest, Nuptse, and Lhotse, I had tears in my eyes, and I looked at the mountain and I made a promise. I said, you have given my life back, and I'm going to promise that I'm going to come back one day, and I'm going to attempt to go to the summit by becoming a mountaineer and coming back with a social cause. And so that was the start of this journey. Though what was very unique is that at that moment, I also heard that the local name for Everest in Tibetan is Chomolungma, which means mother of the world. And so here I was making this powerful promise in front of the mother of the world. And it kind of also looked scary. And so it was actually what really inspired me to become a mountaineer. And that's when I told myself, well, if I want to come back, why don't I try to do this thing called the 7 Summits? Start from, once again, very pragmatic, start from the easiest to the hardest, and let's embrace this new side. And so that's what literally led me into this path.
It's so powerful. There's something that you say in your book that I really loved in regards to climbing these massive mountains. And you said, rules don't apply here. Ego and brute force guarantee little around here. You saw Navy SEALs and seasoned climbers like not make it to the top, yet you did. What was it about that sense of a level playing field that impacted your healing process?
Wow, it's a great question, Melanie. I feel that for me is the way that possibly I looked at mountains. I wasn't there to conquer. I wasn't there to impose. If anything, I've developed allergies whenever people tell me, you've conquered Everest. I'm like, no, 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 no. I mean, who are we to say that? I mean, just look at our ego on that degree. These mountains have been in existence for millions of years, and they're going to be here even when we're gone. And so the way that I always had my relationship with nature and mountains was very much of a lot of respect. I treated it like my temple. I felt they gave me the space to be vulnerable, to be all of myself. I never felt any judgment, and I think that was always my attitude. I had possibly even before Everest, I had at about 3 different occasions really hard moments of breakdowns in the mountains. I had to surrender, and so being in these spaces, I think just showed me that the attitude, the ego is. It can only take you so far. And I think having the attitude of just selflessness, of respect, of trying to be in commune with nature is literally what I think allowed me these opportunities. I always had the highest respect. Every single day I was on my expedition in Everest, I would go spend time in front of the altar. We had a little puja altar, and I will give gratitude for just having an extra day. I never took it for granted, and definitely even didn't think I was going to be that lucky to make it to the top of the very first. But it showed me that, yeah, I mean, the ego the noise is just simple noise, which, and that's one of the things that I love about having these experiences in the mountain world, because it applies anywhere. And it really highlights it. But yeah, the big talking doesn't really get you that far at times.
The mountains gave you a sense of belonging. That's what I'm hearing you say. I mean, at one point, you asked yourself if perhaps the drive to climb was to literally fall over the edge and end it all. Like, where on this path of summiting did you feel you turned a corner away from thinking about dying to really thinking about living?
It was actually during our final push to the summit. We had to climb the mountain, almost have 3 rotations to get acclimated, to get the right comfort zone. And it was on our final push. We were moving, I think we were on our 3rd day, and we were moving from Camp 2 to about Camp 3. We were getting closer to around 24,000 feet. And unexpectedly, we come across a horrible storm, one that actually almost kills all of us. It was possibly one of the worst situations that I've ever found myself. And I felt my mortality. And I remember crawling to get inside my tent. I was alone. Our team had dispersed. And I remember just having this blockage. And it was that possibly experience that allowed me to feel that I wanted to live, that I wasn't ready, that, this wasn't so much of a suicide mission for me. It was more about, I had given appreciation for the experience that I had had, for the beauty of the sights that I had seen, but I really had this willingness to really wanted to stay alive. And I think that was pivotal. I mean, I kind of remember telling myself, yeah, this has been a messy life and I still want to be around. And I was ready to quit. I at that point, I remember telling myself, I want to live and I don't think I can do this. I mean, I don't think I can continue forward. I was just too scared. And one of my female guides came inside. And as I was telling her, I can't go any further. I love my life. I really want to be able to stay alive. She told me, like, Sylvia, you have it in you. We're going to go together. I was able to actually be vulnerable to her, express my emotion. I remember telling her, like, God, I'm afraid. I've had all this fear. I kind of started feeling vertigo. And she normalized it. She said, listen, this is something that happens. It's okay. We will have our bad days. You are going to be okay. You have it in you. We're going together. And those words, I think, made me also, it brought me a sense of belonging, that I really had this opportunity of being in this circle with the rest of these climbers to continue going forward. And I think if she might have not said that to me, I possibly would have just left over there.
I mean, the power of community is really what I hear you say in terms of that sense of belonging. And at some point in this journey, you got the idea for your nonprofit organization called Courageous Girls, which helps young survivors of sexual abuse overcome their trauma through climbing mountains. Tell us more.
Yes, when that very first time when I went to the base of Everest, I had made a promise to come back with a social cause. And that took me a long time to determine what it was, which I think is always interesting. Whenever we put a purpose, whenever we put ourselves in service, um, we need to trust that sometimes that's going to take a little bit of time. And for me, I remember trying multiple times, maybe this is going to fit, maybe I should do this. Maybe I should actually, climb on behalf of other people. And it was actually after I had one of my most difficult years, 2013. I had lost my mother to cancer. I had gone through a painful divorce, that I remember taking myself to climb another one of the 7 summits. So I was down in Aconcagua. And the night before the summit, I started being unsure of my ability to continue going. I was getting altitude headaches. And I remember that evening, I had a massive breakdown. I started crying. I was lucky that my tent mate was snoring, so his snores actually didn't make it too embarrassing for me to cry and let go. But I remember what I was doing. I was opening up my heart. I was surrendering to that experience. And the next day, I was able to continue my journey. I was able to summit. And that evening after the summit, my mission to bring survivors of sexual abuse and give them the opportunity to experience healing in nature came very clear. It was almost as if the mountain was having compassion towards me and being like, "You've been looking for this? Here it is." I felt I got my orders. And that, made it simple for me. Okay, well, it's going to be a crazy idea to convince people, but it is coming from a sacred place. It's coming from vulnerability. It happened while I was in the mountains. Let's do it. And that's what was so amazing. I mean, it started with inspiration of almost working with these young women, and they kind of became my guinea pigs to see if even they could experience the healing that I did. And the beautiful part is that they did. And that is part of what the journey. I feel that working with them before going for my own journey climbing Everest, I mean, going through that base kind of experience together really opened me up. I mean, it kept me very grounded. It taught me so much. It actually taught me about belonging, about vulnerability in ways that I think it prepared me for the rest of my expedition.
I'm really struck by your clarity, and I could truly ask you questions for hours, but we're nearing the end of our session. And so I want to close with one final question. When you think about not only your personal journey, your corporate journey, what are some tips or ways that we can foster a sense of belonging in our communities, especially when considering the many seen and invisible layers of identity that all of us bring?
Wow, great question, Melanie. I think my humble advice, it starts with the self. I think, and as you had mentioned, is one of the ethos for Google. But for us to really being able to look at a mirror and actually really accepting ourselves and having to embrace some of these difficult experiences and maybe we're out of our control. So trying to find ourselves, trying to find that whole side of us is number one. I would say the other part is be open to listen. We're going through some incredible times. Um, and I think it's going to take showing up, whole, being able to listen, being able to be brave and vulnerable. I think that can create a really powerful way of us creating belonging, extending it to others. And I mean, for the work that Google is doing, the impact that you guys have had in all of our lives, I'm a massive user and I've benefited so much of it. I think it's a beautiful purpose that every single person at Google is engaging. And I think some of these tidbits, it's in all of you guys. So, I mean, it's my little humble learnings or lessons.
Thank you, Sylvia, for sharing your bravery, your journey, and your inclusion techniques with all of us. I lived in Albuquerque for 2.5 years, and I had the wonderful experience of starting my own hiking journey while I was there, the mountains, the sunrise, the sunset. So I really feel that spiritual connection that you're talking about. To our attendees, be sure to pick up Sylvia's book, In the Shadow of the Mountain, at your local bookstore. I hope that you will incorporate her inclusion and belonging teachings from today in your communities. Thank you, Sylvia.
Thank you, Melanie. Thank you for this incredible opportunity. Thank you to Google Cloud Next. And wow, I'm inspired. Albuquerque, why not? Thank you so much.
Thanks again, and thank you all for joining us at our DEI keynote. Enjoy the rest of Cloud Next.